Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Magicians. A lot of interesting things went down, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's talk about everything going down in Fillory. I love that Finn is trying her best not to talk about, her destiny and everything like that, because it was about Margot's destiny, but then it kind of all intertwines and talks about her own destiny. But it was more so about Finn's to a certain degree. I guess if we did get a look at Margot's, it would have kind of spoiled how things ended up playing out, but I guess that's kind of for us to eventually find out. It's kind of interesting because obviously it's like, the whole thing about side characters and stuff like that, and it's like, here's Finn's whole situation, and Margot, the main character, we don't get to find out her situation because we'll find out about it naturally throughout the story. It's just kind of interesting when you think about it like that, but nevertheless, a lot of stuff went down. Margot finds out that Elliot's still alive, and then her and Josh proceed to do their thing. And it's like, and I love that it's like, there's a dude named The Foremost who is connected to, being able to, remove demons from people who've been possessed with these ice axes. And Margot's like, you got to be shitting me. And Josh is like, no, that's literally that's something didn't just happen between us. And it's just like, for Margot, like I said, it's just on the upside of things. It's like there's hope again. Her bestie is still alive and everything. And then, Finn deals with the fact is that, hey, Queen Rue, who is played by the actress who plays Doc in Van Helsing. I was like, dude, that's cool. I just love stuff like that. When actors from other sci-fi shows pop up in others, like I said, it's got to be like a Canadian thing. It has to be. I talk about it all the time. But nevertheless, I'm not going to go down that tangent every time, even though I just did. So it's like, hey, I'll make peace with Fillory if you take the throne from Margot. And obviously Finn doesn't want to do that because it's like Margot is her friend, because it's like, don't tell me she's your friend. She's like, what? No. It's like, yeah, you care about Margot, obviously. And I love Josh overhearing it. It's like, what? When we found out, The Foremost doesn't come to Fillory, doesn't really talk to people, I thought that, I was like, oh man, did Josh lie to Margot? It's like, no, he just didn't know that because Tick knew. And I love Margot trying to tell Tick, it's like, no, you go. And he's like, well, I'm going to tell you, I'm not a magician. I'm not this and that. We don't do well in that climate. And he's like, but if you really want me to, she's like, all right, just shut up. I know this is going to take a bad bitch to kind of handle this situation. He's like, thank you. He's like, I most likely would have died. She's like, yeah, whatever, Tick. And it's just like him just trying to squirm his way out of the situation because Josh informs her, hey, Finn's trying to overthrow you. But in the end, I guess it works out because in Margot's mind, it's like, if she's not affiliated with Fillory, then The Foremost will talk to her at the very least if she's not connected to Fillory. So it's something that's needed to be done. Obviously, it sucks because Finn knows, this is her stabbing her friend in the back, and you can tell, Margot is brokenhearted by it because it's like, let's not forget how important Fillory is to Margot. For her and Elliot, this became their new home. This is where they grew. They had a lot of responsibilities. This is where they shed a lot of who they were before. Like I said, becoming, High King and High Queen and all that, it changed them for the better. They became more responsible people. And the sad thing is, Margot didn't even get to rule for that long because complicated situations just kept getting in the way and everything. So it's not to be fair, in the context of season 3, we don't know how long she had the crown, but which is interesting considering the fact that Finn was kind of running things while Margot was going anyway. So, but still, it's just kind of sad things have worked out this way. Like I said, it kind of played out to a way it needed to, but once again, it's this is a home to them, and it kind of had that taken away from you because it's just, especially because it seemed Margot's supposed to be this great queen and everything like that. But I guess in the long run, that's what a queen does. She makes those hard choices so no one else has to. She's the one that made that decision, so Finn didn't have to, because Finn, it's hard to say which way Finn was going to go. Obviously, she wasn't going to kill Margot, but she probably would have done the banishment thing, because obviously it's I'm not going to kill my friend, But the sad thing is that means she can never come back to Fillory. It's that is harsh, dude. I forgot, what was it that she said at the very end? When she was getting branded, she was like, son of a pig fucker. And Tick is like, I will kind of use those as your last words to always remember you. Essentially, it was so good. Because that kind of pretty much sums up who Margot is. Her saying that statement, those being her final words. And it's sad because Josh wanted to go with her, but she's like, no, I need you here to make sure things stay in line here in Fillory. But even she's like, oh, I curse Finn's name, but she's like, you better all listen to her. Your grandchildren's grandchildren will essentially know my wrath and all that. Because for her, it's like, she knows that Finn's best for the job and everything, that Finn will have, the country's, best interest at heart. So for her, it's like, it's a necessary sacrifice because it means she's able to go save her best friend and also know that Fillory is in good hands when it comes to Finn, and also Josh is going to be there. And I love her being like, yeah, like, you shouldn't wait for me. He's like, I know I shouldn't say this, but yeah, I'll most likely wait for you. Sorry. And then she's like, because it's like, you better hope I come through this because I feel like we've got a lot more banging to do. He's like, I think we do too. So it's a nice send off to her, but I'm very interested to see where that ends up going. Will this guy actually have the means necessary? Because I mean, obviously, a demon possession is one thing. This is literally a thing of another caliber inside of Elliot, but it's going to be interesting to see if it works out. Now, there's that. Then we go over to the whole Katie side of things, because apparently there's a group of head witches going after other head witches because of this whole situation. I said I was trying to say hedge witches, but now in retrospect, let me just saying they almost sound like I said head witches. Nevertheless, basically there's a group of serpents going after other hedge witches because the library's reduced the amount of magic going out, so it's like, oh, we're killing anyone that's using magic because we need to use magic sparingly. They want it for themselves, yada yada yada. Alice shows up in time and Katie's still pissed at her, and it's like, oh, you're willing to help? Bam, punches her in the face. It's like, okay, now we're good. It's like, yep. Alice on her apology tour, interestingly enough, this is all about using Zelda. By helping her with the whole Harriet situation, they can find one of the pipelines, because basically they want to kind of erupt magic all over the place because they get enough magic flowing, it kind of evens the playing field in a sense. Like, people will stop doing all this killing because it's like the serpents will have no reason to do that when there's enough magic to kind of go around, essentially. So that was really interesting. Alice literally having to confront herself this episode, basically being split between the more aggressive side of herself and the more passive side of herself, and her passive side knocked out and locked away her aggressive side because it's like, you represent everything that's wrong. Like, you basically screwed everything up. You pushed all the people that were important to us away, the whole Quentin situation. You're the reason why the keys got destroyed. But the aggressive Alice, it's basically like, oh no, like, you're the reason why. It wasn't my arrogance and overconfidence that led to that. It was all of you. Your fear is what led to you destroying those keys. So it's interesting because, like I said, like, Alice has been at war with herself for a while now, like ever since she came back, because it was all about who she was. And this was literally a manifestation of her literal, struggle to find out who she is, these two separate pieces of herself, which was interesting. It took her kind of like, it's interesting because that side of Alice, I guess you see it come out every once in a while, the whole confident side of her. Like, I guess you could make the argument that side of her was definitely prevalent when it came to her Niffin days, but like, I guess anytime she kind of steps up and kind of like speaks her mind, that's kind of that side. But it does seem like a lot of times you see Alice, she is very meekish, but there are other times where she is very aggressive, and I guess that's that side of her. I just feel like, I guess because there's such a balance of it, that it doesn't come off as extreme, because obviously we got the more extreme sides, the more meekish side of her, and the more extreme, aggressive side. Like, we got the both, ends of the spectrum for her. So obviously we see it a lot more than I feel like we typically would, but I guess if you look back at everything of Alice, you can see both sides throughout everything, so... Luckily, she was able to save Harriet. Which, side note, notice who's not being brought up in this conversation at all, Victoria. It's like, oh yeah, I guess we don't care about Victoria. Or I guess the sad thing is, it's too late for Victoria, which is kind of very sad. That situation came down to that potentially. I don't know if there's a reason like behind that or not. Because it's all about saving Harriet. I mean, to be fair, it's all about saving her because, well, she is Zelda's daughter, and that's what this is all about. It's interesting too because like the whole Dean Fogg situation of like him, because the library was like, yo, here's a bunch of students who are potentially hedge witches, hand them over. But obviously he has a hard time doing that because obviously he's gaining more and more of a conscience and morals because he feels bad about it. He's like, even after all this toy totalitarianism, like I literally struggle to say that word, that the situation has come down to he's kind of fighting against it a little bit. It's like, yeah, you kind of betrayed enough of your students, so I'm sure you have a hesitation about going forward and betraying more, so there's that. But for him, he's, he added his own deal in with this whole Zelda thing. The real interesting thing was between Katie and Zelda, in the sense of Zelda, we ended up finding out, like, oh, apparently her mom was a hedge witch, but she died when Zelda was 10, meaning Zelda was a hedge witch, which you wouldn't think so, like the way she's so buttoned up and kind of like very for the rules and stuff like that. Well, that's because Everett brought her in. Like, for her, she actually looks at what she does now as kind of a bad thing. Like, she feels like what she's done now as a librarian, like all she's done recently, she feels like it's worse than anything she did as a hedge witch, no matter what mischief and trouble she caused. And for her, it's like she has faith in Katie to be the one to kind of handle things, and she's like, why is that? It's because you are literally here, sitting here, listening and talking to the person responsible for the person you love dying, and you're trying to understand them. And so for her, it's like the fact is that you can basically not necessarily compartmentalize. Your understanding, you will end up picking the paths that will lead to the least amount of people getting hurt. So that was just kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, it's just interesting what they're doing. Katie's story of like her kind of taking this role of like this leader. I even love it, like Alice being like, yeah, the word on the street is like you're the new Morena, and Pete was like, no, people are really saying that, which is interesting. Because also we have not seen Morena since her and Penny came back from their timeline trip. So that's definitely interesting. I'm curious what's up with that. Last time we heard, obviously she was going to make up with her girlfriend because it's like, oh yeah, I know all the stuff I screwed up in our timeline, so I can make things work here in timeline 40. So there's that whole thing. But then we get some interesting news from Harriet that everything up to this point, the Serpents, that's not hedge witches. Apparently that's the library, which, of course, like, obviously, which shouldn't come to no surprise, because even with Zelda and everything, the library has been very duplicitous. I've been using that word a lot lately. It's a really good word, duplicitous. So it turns out Everett, the whole point is to make everyone scared. Because of this whole serpent thing, hedge witches are coming in to be like, oh, give me that mark that's going to make it so I can't do magic. Because this way, if the worm gets me, it won't kill me. But it turns out that this is all for the purpose of creating, like, it's this propaganda of, like, creating a problem and being there to solve the situation. Because this way people, you wipe out your opposition, that being, like, hedge witches, anyone that would question your authority, and those who are like, wait, you saved our lives, will be more inclined to be like, hey, we're on your side. So it kind of makes the opposition weaker, but it also makes it that going forward, either they're 100% on your side, or at the very least they're more likely to be like, hey, we'll tell you whatever information we want. So it's kind of interesting, because for Zelda, this is the situation of like, this is the man who brought me into all this. He's the one, obviously, as we heard, he took her in and shaped her into who she is now. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see Zelda kind of. I think we're going to see her potentially slip back into her old days as a hedge witch. It'd be kind of interesting to see her kind of not be kind of like so, uptight, the Zelda would come to know. I'd be so interested to find out, like, will we see her kind of revert back to who she was before to kind of do this situation. I don't know. It's going to be her basically against the entire library. At the very least, Everett's behind this. We don't know if the rest of the library is necessarily behind. Well, I think Harriet did say they were. Like, she kept pointing out Everett specifically, and we saw him working on, but maybe the rest of the library thinks they are doing good. Maybe they'll even side with Everett being... Like I said, I don't remember if that's what Harriet had said specifically. Though it is kind of neat, though. Like, now they have a chance at kind of a mother-daughter relationship, Because, I mean, I guess, maybe that's why Zelda was always so extreme when it came to Harriet, because it's like she never had much of a relationship with her mom. That had probably like, well, her mom being a hedge witch, and now Harriet doing her thing probably makes Zelda think of herself when she was younger, all the trouble she kind of mixed up as a hedge witch. So that's probably why she just like wants her daughter to be on the right side of things, but now Zelda realizes she's kind of potentially on her own side of things. It's definitely going to be an interesting turn of events when it comes down to all of this. We also had Alice finding the binder book that they were looking for, which is interesting because it ended up being in that mirror world. What does that say about anything? But it also interesting because that could be used as it might put her back in everyone's good graces. I mean, to be fair, Julia was kind of pissed, but hey, this might help out because, might make everything like, hey, I'm here to help. I brought a peace offering, so we'll see. Then there's the whole situation with the monster looking for the pieces, because apparently there's only one more piece left, and it turns out that Annullius is the one with the last piece. Obviously, that whole Penny situation playing out the way it did, it's kind of interesting because obviously it's that whole dilemma of like, are you willing to risk a lot of people's lives for the way to save one person? Because Penny is like, yo, once we get that other piece after tracking down Annullius, we destroy it. But then it's like, no, because then Elliot, but because Quentin's like, we'll find a way. But Penny's like, yo, I literally came from a timeline where you did not find another way. But Quentin doesn't want to talk about it. And I think, Alice wanted to help out, but she was probably like, no, Quentin wouldn't accept my help right now. So her helping out with the Katie situation potentially might help her help out Quentin, especially if she brings the binder, because that can help Julia figure out her whole situation, which is like, yo, you need to figure out your situation because dragons and everyone's kind of like, yo, you need to fix that because we still don't know what that is. Is that supposed to, like, why is it so dangerous, her being, like I thought before, like maybe just it brings some crazy unbalance to the universe. We'll have to wait and see. And what the binder is exactly and what answers it's going to have for Julia. So there's that. But then Penny being, it letting a monster be inside of its mind and everything. We kind of see a look into its past. It's kind of interesting because it's like, oh, they call me a monster, but it turns out Annullius only showed up because, like, oh, there's a girl there that, like, the other three gods had brought there as kind of like a way to draw him in and everything. And it's like, it for him, it's like, you call yourself like a god of war and stuff like that. He's a real monster. It's like you want them weak and afraid. That's kind of like his thing or something. He's kind of predatory like that. And it's like, Jesus. But even the monster's like, yeah, there's something here I'm supposed to remember. But then like Elliot tells Penny 23, like, yo, don't let this thing remember. Because apparently this isn't just about its body. There's so much more at play here, which is going to stress the point of pushing Quentin to the point of like, he made a hard decision last year, and obviously, once again, suffering the ramifications. It's sad, because Quentin's always been put in a situation where he ends up having to suffer the ramifications for, because magic got turned off, because he killed a god, because that god was literally screwing everything up and was going to kill a whole bunch of people because he had gotten bored, so it's like, but he didn't know about the consequences of that. Then there's the whole thing of like, oh, bringing magic back, and then like everything went to shit with the library taking control and everything. It's kind of interesting because we've yet to deal with the McAllisters. There's still an issue that has to be dealt with, but we haven't circled back to that. We've heard them being brought up, but that's about it. I'm interested to see if there ends up being anything about that. I wonder on some level, does it have anything to do with the fact is, let's not forget the actress, is it Jamie Newman? Is it Jamie Ray Newman? Or Newton? I think it's Newman. I'm terrible with names. I do apologize. She was working on Midnight Texas, so I don't know if like the schedulings didn't line up that allow her to potentially do this at the same time. Like I said, I don't know the production schedule, but that came out, was that this year? That was last year, but still, the production schedule could have been around the same time. Nevertheless, I'm going on a tangent. I do apologize. It's just interesting we've heard reference to them, but they still haven't popped up yet. Maybe that's just something that's going to pop up a little later on this season. We'll have to wait and see, but things are definitely going to get interesting. I'm so curious to find out, like, what is it so bad that these pieces together aren't a body, but something worse? What is it that this thing doesn't remember? Maybe it has something to do with that woman. Maybe that woman is technically his mother, and that maybe we kind of had... It's a little fucked up, but maybe we have a similar situation to the whole Reynard and Julia situation. Like, maybe he's a byproduct or something like that with the whole Annullius thing. That might not be the case, but you don't know. A lot of mythology shows gods as being super fucked up. We've even heard in this reference, like, gods being super fucked up. We've seen gods be super fucked up. So, I mean, I don't know. Which is interesting, to be fair. It can't be that, though. Now I'm sitting here thinking about it, just because it's like the creature was already free before that happened. So I don't know. But to be fair, that woman must be important that the monster would even... Because even he's like, I don't know why I'm so upset. It still could be the fact that... So this thing could be like a demigod or something like that. Much like Reynard's other child. Maybe not. I don't know. But maybe whatever its situation is, that was the mother that gave birth to it, and that's why that woman in particular upset. Could even be like, the creature being like, why does this upset me? So we'll see, because what it's building could technically be like a bomb that basically wipes out everything, because this thing just wants everything destroyed. Maybe it plans on wiping out all the gods, and that'd be some huge cosmic chaos to have like all the gods. Like maybe this is like a weapon meant to wipe out all gods in an instant. Who knows? We'll have to wait to see what goes down in the next episode to potentially find out like what the hell is going on with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and good